Hi all. We're going to get started, I think, because we don't want to be here too late into the evening. And we have Roshan. So thank you all so much for taking the time to come to our Inclusive Economy and Culture Scrutiny panel this evening. As you know, when you're speaking, please do press the button on your microphone and make sure it's turned on when speaking, and remember to turn it off after you're finished speaking. All the reports on the agenda will be taken as read, so please feel free to summarise, everybody. We have all had a read through the papers, and as you all know, it's being recorded live, so and going out onto the council YouTube. So I'll do apologies for absence first. So we've had apologies from Councillor Thomas, apologies from Councillor Smith, Councillor Davis and Councillor Rhymes. So our newest member. Is there any urgent business? No one has made me aware of any urgent business? No, perfect. Are there any declarations of interest for any of the items? No, okay, thank you very much. And are we happy to confirm the minutes from the meeting held on the 11th of September are accurate? Yeah, got some nods, great, I will sign those. Okay, so we can go on to our first item, which is review of the markets and update on market improvement planning. So over to you, I think, Councillor Smith. No, it's all right, take your time, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I'll just do an introduction to the report. So I'm pleased to introduce the report on the review of markets and the implementation of our market improvement plan. This work is central to our ambition of creating vibrant, inclusive and economically resilient town centres across RBG. Over the past year, we've made significant progress, particularly in Woolwich, where Beresford Square Market reopened in June after substantial public realm improvements. The redesigned space now features terrace seating, urban garden, interactive fountain, which the kids loved in summer, creating a more welcoming and flexible environment for both traders and visitors. It's already proved to be very popular with young families. We've also strengthened market governance by updating market rules, and this has been seeing the introduction of annual licence reviews, clearer payment protocols, and a more robust compliance to robust approach to compliance and trader support. The changes are helping us to create a fairer, safer, and more sustainable market operation. The new square also provides great spaces for events, performances, and activities. A fantastic example of this was the recent Hansel and Gretel performances, which last weekend brought additional footfall to the area and served as a free community event to residents. There's more to come over the Christmas period and into the new year. However, we have to acknowledge that we've had some challenges. The new linear layout of the market stalls limits our capacity to grow the market and generate more income for the council. It's also increased some costs due to a need for traffic marshals to ensure safe movement of vehicles during set-up and takedown. Also over the summer, we faced some challenges in the square during the evenings, including incidents of antisocial behaviour. As a result, we've introduced enhanced evening protocols to manage the situation more effectively. The generation of Woolwich is ongoing. Looking ahead, we anticipate further disruption from the nearby proposed development schemes, including Electric Works, which is the land bounded by Beresford Street and McBean Street, and a potential project by Packaged Living, which is at 1 to 4 Beresford Square, which is the existing pound stretcher and associated buildings. Whilst this investment is welcome, the proximity of the developments to the new market layout and market compound is likely to impact market space and access. So therefore, supporting market traders during this period remains a top priority for the council. I'm particularly proud that we're supporting the next generation of market traders. We partnered with Barclay Homes and the Academy of Success on an exciting new initiative, the Youth Enterprise Programme. This recently launched a 10-week programme equips young people with vital business skills and gives them the opportunity to trade at our Christmas market, and will be amongst the first to use our Christmas chalets. To sum up, the report highlights how the markets are evolving, not just as centres of commerce, but as platforms for community engagement, youth development and inclusive growth. It also outlines opportunities to modernise our fee structure, expand street trading across the borough, and better integrate events to drive footfall and increase income. Thank you. I'm happy to take questions, and officers are available. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Councillor Smith. So I'll hand over to the team. Does anyone have any questions to kick us off? Yeah. Councillor Pearce.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Smith, and thanks for the report. Thanks to the officers as well. It's great reading. It's good to see the work that's been doing to improve our markets. I actually love the new Beresford market. I think it's brilliant, and it's a welcome kind of addition to the kind of the urban scape of Woolwich. You mentioned about the new layout in sort of not really helping in terms of the linear layout, not really helping the market traders. I'm just wondering if that was something that was considered during the planning and development process of the Beresford Square, or if this is kind of something that's kind of caught you by surprise, I think.
I don't know what to say, really. Everybody involved in developing that market space and Power Street is no longer with the council. There are issues. There are issues about the design and the layout and the maintenance and all of the associated things that come with that. People were asked their views. They gave their views. They weren't necessarily listened to, is probably the politest way that I can respond to that. However, it is what it is. We are doing our absolute best to manage those challenges. I think we're doing that fairly well. The new investment in getting things done, which puts money to the town centres, kind of comes really directly as a response to that, which doesn't just put money across Woolwich, it puts it across Greenwich and Eltham as well. We will always have challenges. We will always have to rise to the challenges the best we can within the financial constraints that we've got.
Just on the on Plassey Place as well, because I love this idea that you're working with the young people, young entrepreneurs as well. I'm just wondering what the take-up is for chalet huts, and how that's being advertised to residents and potential entrepreneurs.
Yeah, I'm happy to take that. So we advertise 3 locations for the Christmas chalet huts. This will be the first time that we've had them in situ. Unfortunately, take-up for Plassey Place was extremely low. We had, I think, 1 application across the whole period. So we've decided to refocus the efforts. So those chalet huts have now been reprofiled to Beresford Square and to Greenwich High Road, given the fact that we do need, obviously, a mass of traders to make that a success. But going forward, we'll be working closely with, we have quite close liaisons with Eltham through partnership groups. So we'll be looking at how we can improve on that going forward, because I think it's a great space. We're working a lot with the community there, and we will be trialling the Christmas chalet huts this year and hoping to build upon that year on year.
Yeah, go Councillor Hannan. Yeah.
Thank you, and thank you for the report. I found it a really interesting read. I've got 2 questions which are slightly related. The first is around street trading and markets, and just wondered if you're defining new market spaces, so not just looking at the existing markets, but thinking about any new market spaces that we could be working with, and also whether you're thinking about markets in our parks, like Greenwich Parks. I know that there's in some boroughs, there's really great markets that are doing really well in parks, and they're drawing more people into the parks and to use the parks.
Yes is the answer. So we are actively trying to grow our market portfolio, so to bring in new entrepreneurs to the borough. So we've recently been advertising some temporary street trading locations across the borough where we're opening up new locations. And they range from Cuttisock Gardens to Calderwood Street to Plumstead. So as I said, we're actively seeking out new locations. We're really keen to support growth and diversity, and we think there are a lot of spaces where markets could really bring greater vibrancy to towns and to areas. We are in conversations with some of our other colleagues. We haven't actively explored the parks at the moment, but we can take that away as a further consideration.
Yeah, I was just going to add, in terms of the parks, I know colleagues in the culture team will be looking at activation in parks as part of their sort of programme of activity coming forward. So that's something that will be considered. And I think, yeah, just as Kat said, you know, we are looking to diversify the offer and grow the offer where possible. I think there are some constraints around Greenwich Town Centre because of the Greenwich Market status that Greenwich Markets has. But we're working very closely with Greenwich Hospitals and looking at just ways to kind of activate spaces like Cuttisock Garden and then the former Clock Tower space as well, which is where we've got the market huts, Christmas huts going in. So, yeah.
Great, thank you. And it's, yeah, I'd be really interested in hearing more about how you progress in your discussions on the markets within the parks. But just on what you were saying, Catherine, about temporary street trading locations, I would urge you to think about each of the communities and neighbourhoods and try and build, I guess, a community feel around and using markets for that. So in the ward that I represent in East Greenwich, we've really been trying to, we're a new ward, we were part of Peninsula, so we've been trying to build an identity for that ward. And we've realised that we don't actually have a centre that we can use. And although we have the Greenwich Centre, which was originally envisioned to be a community space, it's not, because it's managed not by the council, and we've got difficulties with those partners. So we don't really have anywhere where the community can come together and where it feels like a distinct community. So I think when you're looking at markets, it would be great to look at it not just as temporary specific locations, but look at it as a community and what the community, how you can use market spaces to bring communities together and to create a community feel.
Yeah, Councillor Littlewood.
Thank you, and apologies for being late, so you might have covered this, I don't know. So antisocial behaviour was mentioned at Bereford Square, cost of £3,000 per month. So how does your team link up with the antisocial behaviour team? And you know, this is a new development, a really nice, wonderful development, I think, in Woolwich. But how are we going to sort of nip it in the bud before it becomes a long-term issue? And I appreciate that's probably more of an antisocial behaviour question than an economy question, but it'd be great to hear your side of the story.
Yes, an excellent question. Yes, there has been a lot of antisocial behaviour, and we're really keen to work with stakeholders and other colleagues to try and support and eradicate that where possible. So we are linking quite closely, in with the Safer Spaces team, who do very excellent work on the ground. We've also created a radio scheme as well with businesses, and that's more focused on the day and retail crime, but that's proven to be very successful in terms of that partnership working. Also in terms of that town centre, so town centre coordination as well. We have very strong links in with the CCTV team, who are monitoring activity and reporting quite significantly on different activity. And through that, intelligence is being shared with the police and with those networks as well. So through sort of town centre meetings that myself and Michelle chairs, we bring together that knowledge and partnership and sharing to make sure that it's being used in the best capacity, so that initiatives that are being taken forward can help eradicate and reduce antisocial behaviour.
Yeah, please do.
Thanks. And then a different question. So we talk about the pitches where the traders can set up. So the question is, how do we choose what traders go there? Is it a choice? Is it with market price? What sort of process is there? And then secondly, when new traders do arrive, do we find that these are new businesses, or are they businesses that perhaps have moved from elsewhere? So are we generating new business or just moving it, basically?
So within Burford Square, within Woolwich, we have the existing traders that have traded with us for some time predominantly, and those that wish to stay obviously stayed part of the regeneration works and are now trading within Burford Square. In terms of sort of new applications, so we have an application process. So normally the application process would be for temporary street trading initially, and that's for up to a period of 6 months, whereby that allows us as the council and the trader to work out if it's the right fit, I guess, and whereby there may be oversubscription in terms of traders wanting a location. Then we go through a whole criteria in terms of an assessment for the area, diversity, you know, if the trader is a resident as well. So there's a whole sort of scoring criteria that we meet as a panel to look at that to decide. But obviously if there's only one trader that applies for a pitch and there aren't sort of wider considerations or issues, then that trader tends to get that pitch.
Thank you very much. And yeah, I sort of echo Councillor Little's question about antisocial behaviour, as that was one of mine, so it's great to hear some of the positive work that's happening in Woolwich. And one of my other questions was actually going to be, I really like the new branding, and to what extent are you advertising sort of outside of Woolwich to try and get people to come from across Greenwich to Woolwich Market? And in terms of the people that are going to the market, do you think it's mostly people locally, or as in Woolwich, or is it people coming from a wider...
Yeah, so the branding, I'm sorry. Oh, go on.
Answer afterwards. Events, you know, which we are putting on. You know, the Christmas market hopefully will be a big attractor. I'm sure you know that if people come once and they like it, then they continue. There was a lot of use of that square during the summer. It's kind of eased off a bit since, but some of that's thankful because so is the antisocial behaviour. But we absolutely need, and I've spoken to officers about, you know, not being complacent over the winter, that we know, you know, that spring follows winter, and that once the days get warmer and the nights get lighter, then we will have the same problem if we haven't put measures in. And that is working really closely with the police and our own staff in antisocial behaviour teams, which is why some of that getting things done money that's gone into community safety is for dedicated town centre presence. And all of that's happened, frankly, because since I took the post, Michelle and officers have been holding regular multi-agency meetings on managing the town centre. So, you know, that happens with regularity every month. And it has, you know, there are still things to do. We still need to tackle delivery bikes. We still need to tackle a number of things, but and we still need to. So both Kat and Graham both seem like they've been with us forever, but it's only a few months, 6 months now? 6 months now. And we've still got recruitment to do. So we've still got to recruit our town centre managers. We've still got to recruit others to the team to make this work. That's actively in progress at the moment. But we need to make sure that we do get on top of it. And part of our job is to make sure that the money that we say we're spending is being spent on the town centres, and that it's not duplication of anything or replacement of anything, that it's actually new money being spent to improve. So we're kind of on that case. You know, I will say that Kat's done all of the work on the Christmas market, from acquiring the huts for pretty cheap prices to delivering how we're going to use them, to working on the young people's scheme. That's all almost entirely down to Kat, and others supporting her to do that. So I'm really looking forward to it, because I think it should be, and the traders are really looking forward to it as well. We also have regular traders meetings. Was it once a quarter we have them? Up in the gallery in the Woolwich Centre. And they're a very, as you can imagine, market traders, a very active bunch, and say exactly what they think, which is refreshing. But we do know that they are absolutely looking forward to the Christmas period and really getting involved in things. So, you know, I'm looking forward to us delivering on it. And I think it's next week I'm going to meet the young people that are doing the training course and whatever. So, yeah, but that's kind of how we attract people, Izzy, I think, through, you know, we can put out comms and say, come to Woolwich Market, but the best way of getting people in is through events.
Great, thank you very much. That's
Sorry,
really helpful.
and I'll just add to that, just to say that we can capture sort of data in terms of who's using the high street, what postcodes they're coming from, whether they're visitors, whether they're workers. There's quite a bit of intelligence. We'll touch on some of that when we get to the next item, because we've used the high street data service to do that. So we're able to capture that information as well.
And just to say that the branding that you see now is sort of the first initial phases, so we're going to be taking that further. We're working very closely with the food trucks. We're going to be having standardised seating and sort of uniform gazebos for the seating to be under, so the look and feel will be nice. We're working quite closely with those traders around the aesthetics of the food trucks as well. And we're also looking at having more visibility within the lampposts on the town centre. So the initial work is already underway, but yeah, we're still quite ambitious in terms of what we're trying to achieve there.
Thank you so much. It all sounds, very exciting what you're working on. So I really appreciate the report. Any other questions on this item, or shall we head on to the next one? Yeah, okay, so we're on to the next item then. Make sure I get the title right, which is Small Parades Management. So again, I'll hand over, I think, to you, Jackie, to kick us off. Any, yeah. All right. No worries. No, thank you very much.
Okay, I wasn't switched on, but I think I'm loud enough. It's a key priority for 25-26 work programme, and one that aligns closely with our shared ambitions for vibrant, inclusive and prosperous neighbourhoods across Greenwich. Small parades may not always receive the same attention as our town centres or high streets in terms of government or external funding, but they are vital to the everyday lives of our residents. I've been in the one on Shooters Hill, Kidbrooke today. The clusters of shops and services located in different settings along busy roads or quieter side roads and housing estates provide essential goods, create local employment opportunities and foster a sense of place. In many ways, they're the heartbeat of our communities, and their health is a strong indicator of the local vibrancy and resilience of our neighbourhoods. This report offers a comprehensive overview of the borough's 34 identified neighbourhood parades, which collectively host nearly 500 shop units. It is informed by data from the High Street Status Service, internal vacancy audits and site inspections to assess footfall, spending patterns, business mix and vacancy rates. These insights, combined with feedback from traders on the ground and findings from our upcoming business survey, provide us with rich and detailed pictures. The findings are both encouraging and insightful. For example, Westmount Road demonstrates strong commercial fundamentals despite a recent dip in footfall. Footfall is they may do football, I don't know, with spending, particularly in the evening economy, and that's on the rise. Meanwhile, Brewery Road shows stability and growth, including a 20% increase in average spend and low vacancy rates. These examples highlight the diversity of performance across the parades and underscore the need for tailored approaches to their management and support. The report also provides value insights into the council's own retail portfolio, which consists of 208 units, most of which are within the housing revenue account. The properties are generally well let, with a vacancy rate of just 2.4%, compared to a national average of 14%. However, challenges remain, particularly around maintenance, enforcement and the need for cosmetic improvements. It's worth noting that these improvements typically fall to the council only when the units become vacant, as tenants are responsible for the maintenance while the units are occupied. I should also point out that under section 215 of the Town and Country Planning Act 1990. It's been a long day today. I started early, so bear with. Councils can require property owners to improve land or buildings that negatively affect the area's appearance. If the owners fail to comply, the council can undertake the work and recover costs, potentially by selling the property. However, I am veering into an area that sits outside my portfolio, so, I'll leave it there. As we consider this report, it's important to acknowledge that there are no easy solutions for securing improvements to maintain and improve our parades. The report provides helpful foundation for creating metrics to inform the prioritisation of investment should funding become available. We might also explore additional activities such as commissioning studies or conducting more extensive community engagement to better understand and sustain these spaces. We must also examine the broader policy context, including planning regulations and the evolving use classes order and the limitation of tools like high street rental auctions. Whilst these new mechanisms can help bring vacant units back into use after being empty for 20 months or more, they currently do not apply to neighbourhood parades. That said, as the report highlights, many of these areas have very low vacancy rates compared to national averages and are district and town centres. So I look forward to hearing your thoughts, and I'm happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and we really appreciate kind of the thoroughness of this item, and I think it's been a really interesting read for all of us. And I completely agree with you that some of these small parades really are at the centre of some of our communities, and I think really develop a sense of pride of place. So I'm glad to see that we've been able to look into this and some of the work you've done. I guess I can hand over to the panel first if you want to kick off. Yeah, Councillor Letterwood.
Thank you, Chair. So I love a good pie chart, so that's immediately where my eyes are drawn. First of all, so I can see betting shops are 2% of the total. So I think at my other role in the local planning committee and also in residents groups, things like betting shops and even kind of chicken takeaways and things can be quite controversial. So how do we make sure that we've got the right ecosystem of businesses on each parade?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's an interesting point because I think probably you'll know currently the planning, the licensing regime, it gives us very little options, although I think there are sort of changes afoot there that will bring in more sort of planning reforms and strengthen our ability to maybe control betting shops and proximity of fast food type chains, particularly near schools and so on. I think, obviously this report focuses on shopping parades. Vacancy rates are very low, so the chances of, that turnover is quite small. So that, again, there's very little we can do in that regard, unless we, obviously, when those units become vacant, then we can look at that in terms of those that are in our ownership, so those that are largely under the HRA, Housing Revenue Account. And I think, some of the things, I mean, we will be looking at best consideration, you want a market rent, etc. But, there are sort of some additional sort of social value levers that we can pull in that regard.
Yeah, thank you. That's really helpful. And then secondly, so vacancy rates. Is there a target vacancy rate? Because clearly you don't want a high vacancy rate because it's not good for the community. But if it was 0%, then there's no space for new businesses to grow into. So, yeah, so is there a target vacancy rate, and also what sort of the overturn rate as well, which I think you mentioned a minute ago?
Yes. I mean, it was interesting when we set out to look at this because we didn't know what we'd uncover in terms of the vacancy rate. So I think it is quite a pleasant surprise that there are not significant vacancy rates. As to a target, I think that's more pertinent to the team managing the council's portfolio, and where, again, they indicate the vacancy rates are quite low, and when they do have one, there is tend to be strong interest from the market, and they do take quite a market-driven approach, which refers back slightly to your earlier question. I think there's maybe a debate to be had in the council about curation, whether you take a more active hand in curating when those vacancies arrive in terms of the mix that you have, or whether you're purely looking at the well, who's coming forward in the marketplace and what's the best, not necessarily the best financial, but the best overall consideration versus the private landlords and obviously the private holdings there where the levers are much less for the council and it is down to things like licensing and the legal use class orders in terms of meeting the planning obligations. But I think that's an interesting one in here. What we don't have is looking at like the churn. So I think that's an interesting thing to perhaps pick up and look at is where has there been significant churn, which in and of itself can also be a good thing in terms of a vibrant economy where you know, it's adapting, it's changing, it's not stuck in terms of its uses.
Yeah, I was just going to add, I mean, obviously, I think that's absolutely right in terms of those smaller parades. I mean, the business team do go out physically and conduct audits and capture properties that are in transition. So we do kind of have a sense of, are they being fitted out? Are they under offer? So that kind of intelligence we do have. Excuse me, but as... yeah, I mean, I think on the sort of more district and the main town centres, you are going to get that churn. Somewhere like Elton, for example, you know, I think you have a vacancy rate, but pretty much you've got people going in and occupying those spaces relatively quickly. Even some of the sort of examples that we've all sort of been aware of, like the closure of WH Smith's, for example, and already you can see those units already been let, and the bank opposite has already been let. So there is that churn, and generally speaking, you know, there's a good pipeline.
Thanks. Yeah, and sort of to follow on from Councillor Little's question, his first question. One of my questions really was about what more the council can do, or if we do have any levers that we can do to try and shape the kinds of businesses that do come into parades, because I think sometimes there are grumbles that, it's another hairdressers, for example, or another, we've already got 3 of this type of shop, and that was just an example off the head. It might not be a hairdresser, but there's nothing wrong with hairdressers. But where there is like a lot of a single business, or a single type of business, and actually we were crying out for a coffee shop or something, like how can we shape that if we do have any powers, really?
Yeah, again, it's quite difficult, really. But I mean, I think if you take an example like Woolwich, where you've got quite a significant land ownership that belongs to British Land, then it's us understanding what their sort of letting strategy is, and they are looking to bring in better sort of high quality sort of retailers, and have that sort of tenant mix that I guess we are looking for as well. So I think just knowing what's they're planning in the pipeline, I think they definitely are working hard to get a bit more of a diversity in Woolwich Town Centre. But I think in areas where that ownership is more fragmented, then it is quite difficult. But where you have got a major landowner like, as I say, British Land in the case of Woolwich, it's much easier to understand what their letting strategy is.
I think the levers are greater in the council ownership, even though it's HRA. And I know there tend to be far fewer vacancies because our rents are lower, and they fill up very quickly. The problem is in shopping parades and things that are housing estates are usually HRA because that's kind of how it works. But in the smaller parades, they tend to be in private ownership, and the levers are very difficult because they'll go for the highest bid, and they won't necessarily worry much about what it is unless they've got a vested interest in the area and making sure that the mix is there. So we will continue to do our best, but I do think the fact that I was at Blackheath Standard a couple of weeks ago, and the fact that most of those shops there are all in the council ownership means that you've got a really diverse and vibrant 2 sides of the road because we own them. It's not like that in other places, I'm afraid, but I think there's just 1 empty unit there, and the rest are occupied.
Thanks. It's very interesting, and a very good example because it is a great little parade there.
just a quick point on the, if you look at the in-depth on Brewery Road and Westmount in the report, you almost see they're reflective of the neighborhoods and the areas. So the mix and the type of business that you see is serving the local needs. So they will be quite different in different parts of the borough, but they are reflecting, you know, the custom, the neighborhoods around them and providing the services that are there. And actually although there are some key kind of standards that you will see, a significant amount of food and essential kind of shopping, there is quite an interesting mix. And actually some of those that are often thought of as maybe more negative, like say the betting shops and things like that, are actually quite in the minority. But I think if there was a cluster where there was seen to be a problem in a neighborhood parade, it would be harder for them to survive, I would imagine, where you've got between 5 and maybe 30 units of that, something of that order. It's harder for those clusters to survive on a smaller drawing in the market.
Yeah, I'm going to come back to that question and to what you said as well, Graham, because I think that some of our parades, we're seeing that there are clusters of the same businesses, and lots of residents have been approaching, at least me in my ward, about why we have all of these businesses. And there may be custom for them, but I think as well that there's lots of residents that feel alienated, for example, when we have a lot of nail bars coming up, especially when there was more diverse businesses in the past, and they've seen how the high street has changed, and the culture of that has changed, and it's just really feeding one part of the neighborhood and not necessarily the others. So my question is going to go back to what you were saying, Michelle, about and Jackie, about the ownership of the units, and it really just comes down to the highest bidder. But could we not be more proactive in terms of who is coming in to make those offers to those units? So I'm thinking about Visit Greenwich, for example, and the kinds of partnerships that they build to attract those partners to provide services in Greenwich. Could we take an approach like that, where we go out and really sell Greenwich as the site for some of these businesses and court them to come to us and to work in our parades?
I mean, sorry.
I understand what you're saying, but it doesn't work. We've tried that with British Land in Woolwich. It doesn't work. You know, they will do what they will want to do, and they won't even tell us who their proposed tenants are. And it's when something's in private, you have to be very careful legally that if a private landowner is marketing their property and someone else seems to be interfering with it, you could open yourself to legal action, quite frankly. I mean, I understand what you're saying, but we don't have the resources to do that. If I'm going to be honest with you, we don't. And I'm not even sure that even if we had more resource, we could. I'm afraid we live in a society where things are market-led, and as I said to you before, private property owners who own commercial property will follow the highest rent, and if they get that from nail bars over somebody else, then they'll take it, I'm afraid. A long time ago, when I ran a newsagent shop, which is probably before some of you were born, and it was in a council parade, we were able to say, this shop has to be a newsagent, this shop has to be a greengrocer, this shop has to be whatever, back in the day when you were able to say, on an estate, that a shop had to be there for a dedicated purpose. That kind of went out with all of the free market stuff, I'm afraid, and the law doesn't allow you to do that now. So you could not stop, even in our own parades, if it just wasn't by persuasion, two shops doing the same thing next to each other. It's kind of market forces that do it, although I say we've got more levers in our own stuff, but in property we don't own, you know, I know what you say. Residents say, oh, you know, I'd like this and I'd like that, and I'm forever reading the comments in Eltham High Street, which I have to say has probably got far lower than the national vacancy rate, that every time something closes and something else opens, we don't want another one of those, but it's like, but nobody else has come in to fill that vacuum. And, you know, if it's like, well, we could do with, and we can all say it, we can, you know, I can say it, you know, we could do with, you know, I remember when Woolwich had probably 5 greeting card shops, 4 shoe shops, you know, you name it, it had clothes shops, it had all sorts of stuff. We don't have any of that anymore, and they've one by one closed. And the reason they've closed is people aren't using them. And people always say, well, this is what we want, but you weren't using it when it was there. That's the problem. You know, people don't give up on a business unless there is an astronomical rent hike, which, you know, sometimes is the case, or, you know, their business is not doing well. You know, nobody is going to close down a thriving business that's got good custom, where it's still paying reasonable rent for no reason. And, you know, residents clearly have a view, because I have a view on what I'd like to see in Powys Street. I have a view on, you know, what I'd like to see in a lot of places. But if people aren't coming to operate those businesses there, it's really quite difficult. You know, we struggle with Woolwich. I mean, we have got a post office coming back at some point, that we're still kind of working through the detail on that, because we will have to help out in some way. But it's worth it because the post office really increases footfall. People have to come to a post office, so the presence of a post office there, you know, means that everybody benefits. But we are quite limited in being able to make sure that what people say they want is there. And you know, I know from my days of being a director of Thamesmead Town Limited, which preceded all sorts of other things, everyone was saying, you know, oh, what we want in the town centre is a bowling alley. We want a bowling alley. And when you say, when was the last time you used a bowling alley? Never used one. Well, it's like the nearest one was in Bexley Heath, and it's not like a million miles away. But people can say what they want, but unless the people providing that, you know, the people that operate bowling alleys will look at the data to see whether it's commercially viable for them to come. And I'm afraid that's how it is.
There's a link, I guess, around vision and place and future as part of this, which is bigger than the neighbourhood parades in a way. But I think the ambition to look at the urban regeneration frameworks in Abbey Wood, Plumstead and Woolwich, which are the 3 that have been commissioned more recently, I think if you do communicate and put out what your ambitions are for an area or a place, that can play into the investors or the businesses who might want to consider coming in. Everything Councillor Smith said in terms of the market prevailing is exactly right with private ownership, and that'll be the way. But obviously there are agents that are in between the owners and the prospective tenants, and I think if you can communicate and convey what you're trying to achieve or what a sense of an area or a place is, then that can contribute to the future attractiveness. But it's a complex interaction, and it's very much a market position with all of the private land ownings.
I mean, we do our best to get people to listen to what we're saying. So, you know, these guys know I'm forever banging on about, you know, we know how many developments we've got, and I use Woolwich because I know it well, but we know how many developments we've got either agreed through planning, in the pipeline of planning, you know, or likely to come in the near future. And we know that the vast amount of those developments are student accommodation, shared living spaces, and we know the demographic of that is probably under 40, right? So we know that within X many years, we've got Y many people who will be living in Woolwich with nothing to do in the evening. So we're forever banging on about that because we want the nighttime economy not to be a huge nightclub in the middle of the Woolwich, so I don't want anyone to worry about that. But we don't want Woolwich to be a dormitory town. The Elizabeth line is absolutely the best thing on earth as far as I'm concerned, because it gets me to Tottenham Court Road in 20 minutes or so. But we don't want people just using the Elizabeth line to go into central London for whatever it is they want to do for entertainment in the evening and come back again. We need to use some levers to create that. So we're trying to use that information to say to people, take a chance. And I think some people peaked too early in taking a chance, if I'm honest. I know if people remember the really nice fish and chip shop that opened in Powys Street. You know, the guy that ran that used to have a cafe up the road. It was a really nice fish and chip shop. You know, did other things as well, sitting down space and whatever. But he kind of went on, Woolwich is on the up, I'll get in now. And he got too early and his business went bust. So it is a gamble for people. You know, we need to kind of say to them, look, these people will definitely be here by this time. This is how it works. And we are working with colleagues in housing and regeneration in order to make sure that we've got all of that stuff together so that we can kind of hand people like British Land and the other landowners in places the booklet that says this is what Woolwich has got going for it. And you need to use that in your marketing.
Thank you very much. That's a really, really interesting set of answers, so I really appreciate your time. Any questions for anyone else? Yeah, come on.
Yeah, thank you, Chair, and thanks again for the report. I got quite a few questions. I'll try not to keep everyone too late, but one of the questions I had was around the kind of forecourts, and this was actually came from some colleagues in Shooters Hill. So with the Shooters Hill Road Parade. And I was going to mention that, Jackie, and thank you very much for that. But it wasn't so much a kind of, it wasn't a criticism of necessarily that, but I think it was a question around, in terms of where you've got the ownership of the forecourts that are in private hands, and you touched on that earlier, some of those challenges, but what are there sort of proposals or things that you can do? Because I think that my colleagues were sort of mentioning around, in terms of the kind of the general state of the forecourt, and you will have seen it yourself this afternoon. So just kind of what your thoughts are on that. I've got some more questions, but I don't know if you want to touch on that, or if I'll take them multiples, Chair, or how do you want to do it? I've got about 5 questions, so. Yeah,
I've spent like
well,
2.5 hours there this afternoon, so, you know, it's fresh on my mind. Yeah, there are challenges. The forecourt's not the biggest problem. It's the back road that's the biggest problem. And it's in, you know, we've got a few places in the borough where it's a private road. And it's not just a private road in a single-handed ownership. It's a private road in multiple ownerships, which is tricky and challenging. And yes, the forecourt is not in council ownership. Look, I guess what I'm saying, the bottom line is, we do not have the money as a council to deal with things that are not in our ownership. And the only way that we can get those things resolved is by working with those people that own those things to try to create a difference. So John and I have been there this afternoon with officers and about 8 or 9 residents, you know, and business owners, and there is a housing development at the back of the alley, at the back of the shops, that is kind of in progress at the moment. And the owners of that are, because that will be the entry to the houses that they're building. So the back alley bit is going to be totally resurfaced and lit, and new gates put on by that developer. which is welcome. But it's a challenge all the time. We can't spend money on the forecourt, Simon, because it's just not in our ownership, and it would not be sensible fiduciary duty to spend money that we haven't got on something that we don't have responsibility on. The forecourt didn't actually look too bad. You know, some of the paving issues are there, but we've got bits of that all over the place. It certainly wasn't smothered in litter and dumped bags or anything. It was quite clear and whatever. And usually the shop owners look after the front. It's the back that's the problem. And it's not an easy solution to the back, but we're working on one.
I might have a question sort of related to that one, if you don't mind, and then we can come back to others. So my question was, is there a possibility to sort of introduce, well, I was going to say sort of something like bids but on a smaller scale for small parades, because I think as local councillors, obviously we work quite closely. We want to work more closely with local businesses, but I think where we could get support from the team to connect with businesses, I think, you know, we'd really appreciate that opportunity, because obviously it's a big part of our community and it's probably missing in some of the engagement that we can do. So it doesn't necessarily have to be a sort of bid model, but on a smaller scale, but something like that we can maybe help feed into.
I'm not saying this to plot my I am out and about, but I am out and about. So 3 weeks ago-ish, when we were in Old Dover Road, you know, we met a lot of the businesses there in the cafe that stayed open in the evening for us. And one of the things that we suggested, because it has to come from them, you know, and we can facilitate and help, but they've got to want to set up a traders forum. They've got to want to do that, and they've got to, you know, designate someone to be responsible and do it. But to be honest, I'm not sure if they've followed up on it, but one of the things that we suggested to them was they get themselves sorted fairly quickly, and then they could possibly apply to the, what is that fund called?
Neighbourhood Growth Fund.
Neighbourhood, I want to call it Neighbourhood Renewal, it's not that. Neighbourhood Growth Fund for some money to help with some of the things that they need doing. So, you know, in your wards, and I mean, I know the deadline's coming up very quickly, but it will happen again next year. So if they kind of miss it now, it doesn't mean to say that they've missed it forever. But I think it's bigger amounts of money this year. But, you know, certainly if they can get themselves formulated into an organisation, and we can help them with constitution and stuff on that, and how they might do that, but we can't do it for them, you know. But we're certainly willing to help. But, you know, then they can apply for, you know, various grants and funds themselves to do the extra things that they want to do.
No, absolutely. And I guess if there are any resources that can be passed along to councillors who can maybe do that first, did you know that if you had a traders forum, you might be able to apply for money, and then we can sort of do some of that work, which I know that you don't always have the capacity to do.
I think Councillor Smith said most of what I might have said, which, no, that's perfect. And yeah, it's fostering those businesses working together collaboratively, and perhaps one of them becomes like the lead organisation who could apply for such on behalf of an association or a grouping of businesses. And one of the things that we weren't able to unpack was whether there was these informal, because there must be businesses who've been in areas together for a while and have those relationships. Do they work collaboratively on things or not, and where's the appetite, which again will be different in various parts of the borough. But I think that's something to explore further about that kind of collaborative action at the neighbourhood parade level.
Thank you very much. Sorry, Councillor.
No, it's fine. Thanks for the answer. I mean, just to kind of neatly segue into some of my questions, we actually have in Westmount Road an organisation that does that. So we do a kind of Westmount Road lights up and this kind of thing. Sadly, we lost the main kind of guy doing it. Was the landlord of the Long Pond who passed, and so sadly that's kind of and again that's a kind of succession planning, you know, where you have individuals who are leading things forward. When you sort of lose them, it does make things difficult. With regards to Westmount Road, I think in 2.8 of the report, you mentioned kind of there's I think to the sort of challenges that they've got in Westmount Road to address the domestic footfall challenge. I'm just wondering if there's any ideas you have on that I can pass on to residents or to local businesses. And also, again, sort of in terms of sort of local collective work, is just to echo Councillor Cook's point around, please do reach out to local councillors, because we do have those contacts with local businesses that we can help you. And I think the final question I had was in 4.48, where you're talking about the kind of high street rental auctions, and they don't apply to the small parades. And the obvious question is why, but I'm not expecting you guys to answer that here. That's a question for whoever drafted the legislation, presumably. But are there any kind of moves to lobby central government to get that? Is it indeed something you would like to have for small parades, that kind of power? I think that's
Yes, it's quite interesting that the picture on Westmount with sales spending going up and then a decline in footfall, which if you look at, there's a little chart which is month by month, and you get to sort of March or April of this year, and there seemed to be a significant downshift. And we obviously were saying, well, what's that about? What's that happening? We haven't had the opportunity to survey the traders to see if that is in their experience. Do they see that as well? So we need to understand what are the dynamics around that. But we also need to maybe question the data and understand, did something change at that time? Because the footfall is essentially the registering of somebody's mobile signal if they're in an area for 10 minutes or more. Some people might be in and out of a place in less than 10 minutes. But that's how it counts it. And we've got an inquiry with the High Streets Data Service over, was there any change at that time? Did a mast get moved? Or is there something in the middle of this? So we need to interrogate the data and understand that better. But we also need to say, well, are there any kind of dynamics at play there on the data side of it? And sorry, remind me of the second bit there, which was, the powers, the high street auctions. I don't know if, Michelle, you want to, or...
I think with the high street rental auctions, I think they're quite exciting, they're quite new powers, but I think that's definitely something that potentially might happen in the future. I think it'll be really exciting to see how that legislation is used. And I think, it's great that it actually, if there is that 12-month period, it provides quite a lot of flexibility for the council. Obviously, given the vacancy rates, it is dependent on whether, that will be possible in certain areas because the vacancy rates are quite low. But I think, it's certainly a great move, and it's something that could well be explored, and it'll be quite interesting, I think, the powers definitely to see how we can change areas.
Great. Any other questions from the panel? No? Okay, well, thank you so much. That's a really, really interesting item, so appreciate all your hard work on it. Okay. Oh, no, I'm sorry. If you have any comments that you'd like to throw in at the end, you're more than welcome. Oh, thank you very much. I'm welcome.
As I said earlier, we are... From where I started last May to where I am now, we've got more people in the team, we've got great people in the team, we've had people to assist us, more to come. So I'm expecting more delivered. They know, they know my view on pace, but I have to kind of rein myself in a bit, really, because I want everything tomorrow, and it doesn't quite work that way. Recruitment processes take a while, etc., etc. But I am incredibly proud of what the team have achieved, and I think we can go on and do greater things. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yeah, watch this space. Very exciting things to come. So our final item for today's agenda is just the commissioning of future reports. So just to note that we have got 3 items in our January meeting, sort of an update on the Greenwich support strategy, a performance review on welfare rights and advice provision, and then something on nighttime enterprise zones. So I think that'll be a lot of you guys coming back. So thank you so much. And if If anyone's not got any comments on that? No? All right, we can close the day. Thank you very much. Have a lovely rest of your evening.